Fox 4 Dallas meteorologist Dan Henry reporting. And on one of the coldest days in many years in the eastern plains of Colorado, a utility company pleads with people to conserve their energy.
It's a tough ask to get people to watch their energy usage when temperatures are struggling to get above zero. But that's exactly what the Platte River Power Authority had to do. They sent out a message telling their customers who are north of Denver the cold and freezing temps were impacting their wind turbines and solar fields and causing a natural gas shortage. They asked customers to turn down their thermostats and postpone the use of dishwashers, washing machines, and dryers for several hours Sunday evening. The region isn't expected to consistently get above the freezing mark until later in the week.
That's Fox's Rob Dawson reporting. America is listening to Fox News.
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Well, dozens of hopefuls want to be New York City's next mayor.
From a former police officer to a former presidential candidate, even a reality TV star. 41 people and counting are running for mayor of New York City, all with an eye on urban flight and what's ailing the Big Apple. Since COVID first hit New York City, 70,000 people have left, resulting in a $34 billion loss of income, according to data analytics company Unicast. Experts like Catherine Wild with the Partnership for New York point to quality of life issues like coronavirus, high unemployment, rising gun violence, racial injustice, school closures, and a $4 billion budget deficit.
Fox's Aisha Hosni reporting, when New Yorkers vote in the June primaries, a new ranked voting system will be used, allowing selection of up to 5 candidates in order of preference. Also new tonight, pop icon Britney Spears had a victory in her conservatorship legal battle after a judge has denied her father, Jamie Spears' objections to sharing monetary control with a financial institution, which was appointed last year as a co-conservator.
The fight between Britney and her father over her financial affairs is back in the spotlight, apparently, especially after the recent release of the New York Times documentary showing what led up to this financial arrangement. On Thursday, the attorneys representing both Britney and her father were back in court fighting over how her dad should share power with a newly appointed financial company. The judge ruled the power should remain equally split and that they need to work together on a budget and investment plan for the singer. It's a ruling that legal expert Brian Claypool considers a legal win for Britney.
This was just a partial victory. I really believe that this conservatorship issue is trending in her direction. She now has an independent, objective third party that's looking out for her finances. That's good for her.
That's Fox's Christina Coleman reporting. I'm Mary Corsetti, and this is Fox News.
Rolling sound, quiet, and action.
The Ray Gibson Show, starring Senator Mana Silva Tyron as the news anchor.
I'm Mana Silva Tyron, and I'll have your local news every morning. Life moves pretty fast, so stay with us to stay informed right here on The Point.
Also starring Jerry Roberts as the Better Business Training Guru.
Get out there and do something good today, like listen to us Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m., where we go extra for you.
Produced by the real Joe Cruz. And your warm and intelligent host, Ray Gibson.
It's the Gibson Stream of Consciousness. All the players and all the games with cameos and calls from the most interesting people like you. We'll see and hear you right here on your talk radio superstation. This is The Point.
The Ray Gibson Show was filmed before a live Facebook audience.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Featuring the latest special at Mezcla, Manopua, baked barbecue pork buns, Chinese-style barbecue pork in buttery pastry, $30 for a dozen. Call 479-2652 or 2653 to place your order. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Yeah, that's the best way I can think of. Let me turn off the sound on my iPad here. I'm pulling a Jimmy. Yeah. A respectful recitation of the Second Amendment is the best way I can think of starting out another week. And today, of course, is our favorite day of the week here on Tall Tales. We've got 5 whole days. Yeah, of interacting with our international radio listening audience of tailgaters, laying forth truth, justice, and the American way, all kinds of good things. So if you're interested in a constitutionally oriented, constitutional, libertarian radio show, you've come to the right place. If you're not, you've come to the right place, because obviously you need a little education, and this is a really good place to get it. So let's dive right into that part of the show that I called Zemi Ikotni. It's my backwards bilingual play on words. Literal translation is press the meat, and I turn it around to meet the press, except this show is so much better than the tripe that Chuck Todd puts on the air on Sundays. There's really no comparison. The big difference between Chuck Todd and me is that I don't pretend to be objective as I lay out my own biased spin on the news. Chuck Todd does. So I'm a little bit more honest than Chuck Todd, and by saying that, by saying a little bit more, I'm kind of damning myself with faint praise. Today, instead of reading the usual boilerplate from Gannett News Service or USA Today that the Daily News runs, I'm running a column that they ran, a supplemental column written by somebody named Hadley Heath Manning, who is the Director of Policy at Independent Women's Forum and a senior Tony Blankley Fellow at the Steamboat Institute. Steamboat Institute. And
sounds delicious.
It does, yeah. Yeah, big wheel keeps on turning, proud Mary keeps on burning. Yeah. Okay, so I was attracted to this when I saw the title. Your pillow brand is not a moral political choice. And I, of course, before I even read the first sentence, I knew what this was about. It was about Mr. Mike Pillow, Mike Linnell, who had more TV time during the last year than Donald Trump did. I think if Mike had been on the ticket, he could have won almost any political office that he'd run for. Very interesting guy, interesting personal history. And as luck would have it, I had a really nice Christmas because I received one of Mike Linnell's My Pillows. So I was kind of hoping that My Pillow brand was a moral and political choice. It's kind of like wearing the red hat that says "Make America Great Again." I still got mine. It'll still be around 4 years from now. I'll still get plenty more wear out of it. But I was kind of hoping that I could use the fact that I sleep on a My Pillow for bragging rights as to what a good Republican I am. Here's the column from Hadley Heath Manning. When I go to a farmer's market or shopping mall, I generally don't ask vendors 20 questions about their background or political opinion before buying their product. I want to know, is the product good quality? Is it worth the price? That's a novel approach to buying stuff. Now, there are caveats to this. Generally, I don't want to do business with people who I know are dishonest, immoral, or are using their business towards ends I find reprehensible. I wouldn't buy a new Ford from Planned Parenthood, even if they gave me a really good deal. No, thanks. I'll go to the Ford dealership. And Hadley goes on to say that's where boycotts come in. Consumers are free to pressure companies to act a certain way. That's always been the case. But there's a new, sad effort to politicize all aspects of our economy and our marketplace decisions. This will work against all of the benefits that the free enterprise system offers. It will divide us, and it will only end in misery and dysfunction. Perhaps the most extreme example of this was the, quote, cancellation of Taking Care of Babies, a sleep consultancy business with 1.4 million Instagram followers aimed at helping parents with newborns. Founder and CEO Cara DeMaplin was exposed as having made private donations to the Trump campaign.
Unbelievable.
Really? The next thing they'll tell us is that she came to Guam and stayed on the 19th floor. The scandal of it all. The sad Cara DeMaplin was exposed as having made private donations to the Trump campaign. Wow. She'd have been better off with something like rape or incest or treason or something like that, right? That would have been more for, they would have given her a second chance on those. Online harassers and vicious character assassins came quickly for the mom and neonatal nurse. Kohl's, Bed, Bath, Breakfast, and Beyond, and other retailers recently opted to stop carrying products from My Pillow after founder Mike Lindell supported Trump's claims that the 2020 election result was fraudulent. Retailers cited decreasing consumer demand, possibly because of the calls for a boycott. Fair enough. I would suspect that his sales went up, not down. It was true in my family anyhow. But this month, progressive activist David Hogg, he's the guy who made his bones in one of those school shootings, right? And it's interesting sometimes how people wind up with the names they get. You know, like back in merry old England, some people were bakers. When they got to the States, they're bakers. In German, it's Becker. And oftentimes when Heinz Becker moved to the United States, he became Herman Baker. That's where that name came from. So, you know, you got Baker and Smith and all these names that are derivative of occupations back in the day. And so often the name is really appropriate. I think a fine example of that is David Hogg.
Because of the squealing?
Yeah. David Hogg announced that he will launch a pillow company. The quote, pillow fight jokes write themselves, but that's not what's not funny is the idea that when Americans lay their heads down at night, there's one brand of pillow for people on the left and another for people on the right. If I had one of those Hogg pillows and had to sleep, all screwed around, because I would be sleeping on the right, I'd wake up in the morning with a stiff neck for sure.
I hear it's like a waterbed because it's full of tears.
Yeah. So, of course, people are free to swear off products from particular people or companies, and at times boycotts are merited. But one has to ask, where do we draw the line? We should consider what is lost when so many marketplace decisions are driven by politics. Do things like baby advice, beauty tips, pillows, and even the fiction we read have to be politicized? Where does this end? We are headed for an even more insulated world if we only want to associate or even do business with like-minded people. The internet has made it easy for us to know details about the lives of people running businesses. But ultimately, it's not the internet or social media that's responsible for accelerating the trend towards a politicized economy. It's the Democrats. It's our approach to politics that really at the root. What was once a simple political disagreement, I voted for candidate A, he voted for candidate B, is now presented as a moral divide, almost religious in nature. And the whole idea of virtue signaling, which we didn't even know about 4 years ago, now governs so much. Candidate A is for blah, blah, blah. And that's the right thing. I really identify with candidate A. I'm a good person. You don't identify with candidate A, you are a bad person, and I'm a good person. It's kind of how it works. A true celebration of tolerance would lead us to overlook our differences for the sake of serving one another and adding value. We should welcome opportunities to remember that even if you don't agree with the restaurateur or daycare provider's politics, you still love his cuisine or her way with babies. We hear often that the benefit of free enterprise is prosperity, but it's more than that. It's the incentive for diverse people to serve one another and work together toward a common goal, whether that's widgets, taking care of babies, or developing of a new vaccine. We shouldn't stop to ask who someone voted for first. Yeah. Now, I'm going to do something that I haven't done before. I'm going to go backwards, and I'm going to go back to the Second Amendment because it ties in so nicely with that column. Well, wait a minute. Hang on just a second. I got the wrong article here. Yeah, I agreed with that column that Hadley wrote about, pillows for the left, pillows for the right. But now I'm going to make an exception here when I read this article. This comes from The Blaze, and it's by Phil Shiver. And here's what Phil said. Ammo producer to Biden voters, we don't want your money.
Ooh.
Phoenix Ammunition, a Michigan-based ammo manufacturer, decided recently to stop selling its products to people who voted for Joe Biden. As a way to weed out the unwanted customers, the company reportedly inserted a questionnaire into its purchasing process that asked whether prospective customers voted for Biden in the 2020 presidential election. If they did, it's no sale for them. A reverse boycott. I like it. In a series of tweets posted this week, Phoenix Ammunition explained that while it's perfectly willing to engage in a discussion with Biden voters, the company does not plan to conduct business with them. Yes, we're serious, the company said in response to questions about the policy. Joe Biden ran on a campaign built on the most radical gun control platform a major party candidate has ever had, including banning the online sale of ammunition, essentially a plan to bankrupt our company. Sure enough, according to Biden's campaign website, the president has pledged to enact legislation to prohibit all online sales of firearms, ammunition, kits, and gun parts. Are you really willing to walk away from a paying customer simply because they voted for Joe Biden? The company asked rhetorically. Yes, we are. We're dead serious. Dead serious. We don't want your money, and you shouldn't want us to have it because we're going to use it to make more ammo, sell it to the citizenry, and do everything in our power to prevent Joe Biden's administration from usurping the rights of Americans, the company wrote. Phoenix Ammunition is not the first company to exclude Biden supporters from purchasing its product. On Inauguration Day, a store in Missouri called Trigger Firearms and Reloading posted an announcement on Facebook saying, "We don't have guns or ammo for Biden supporters. Sorry for the inconvenience." Meanwhile, guns and ammunition sales have continued to skyrocket after a record-breaking year for the industry. Last August, news broke that gun sales had already topped 2019 levels, with 4 months still remaining in the year. By the close of 2020, it was estimated that a record 23 million firearms had been sold, which is by far the most ever recorded. With a surge of gun sales, ammunition retailers reportedly started running out of stock. So as far as Phoenix Ammunition sees it, with products flying off the shelf already, they don't need no stinking Biden-supporting customers to survive. Good call, guys. Good call.
What do they say? It's a private business. They can do whatever they want.
They really can. They really can. So a reverse boycott. You go out and boycott whoever you want. Just don't come in here to buy ammunition because we ain't selling it to Biden supporters. Okay, back to Zemi Kotny. We turn back to the Post. And the editorial today, funding for non-essential GovGuam services needs to shift towards fighting the war on meth and drug rehab programs. Long before the Wuhan virus disrupted our lives, Guam was going through the drug epidemic, and this problem remains a menace to our community, even though the health pandemic is taking up much of the community's attention. Our ongoing series of stories about people whose lives hit rock bottom because of substance abuse, primarily addiction to methamphetamine, offers cautionary tales. If you think 12 or 13, which is the child's age in middle school, is too early for kids to get exposed to hardcore drugs, think again. What has been surprising in some of the drug abusers' stories is that they were introduced to methamphetamine use at age 12 or 13, and family circumstances, including the presence of meth in the home or exposure to a family member or friend who is a meth user, has led people to slide down the path of drug addiction. Javan Portasak, now 20, was 18 when he landed in jail. He and 4 others were in a house that authorities raided, and the raid led to seizure of nearly 95 grams of meth with a street value at the time of $20,000. The time he spent in jail was a jolt that got Portisac to turn his life around. As soon as I got arrested and put into jail for, I guess I would say 3 or 4 months, I would just sit in cell and think back like, oh man, I'm done. And I can't do this to myself anymore. I know I was pretty young at the time. I was 18. He graduated from adult drug court in 2020, and the case has been expunged from his record. He's going to get a second chance. There are many others who are still under the grip of methamphetamine. Our community has seen so many crimes related to meth. Murders, physical assault of loved ones, thefts, young children neglected in the home and left to starve. There are too many cases. The suffering of the families of meth users continues, though silently. More resources need to be provided in the fight against meth use. These include 1. Providing islands drug rehab programs with personnel, tools, and training to help more drug addicts who want to help themselves. 2. Providing law enforcement agencies with the staffing and equipment they need, particularly the Guam Police Department and Guam Customs in Quarantine. Both are short-staffed, even though the government of Guam has a myriad of non-essential jobs that are staffed. And we can't forget hiring people during the pandemic when their shops were closed and they couldn't even go to work. And we still hired them. Providing customs with not only more staffing, but support and resources. In a recent hearing, it was said that Guam Customs doesn't have the resources to inspect all cargo containers coming into the island. Customs now has only 3 drug detecting dogs when it used to have 12. Whoa. Inadequate funding for police and customs is not the way to fight the meth menace. It's time for government officials to put the funding where it's truly needed. And I know how this works. You know, when it's time to budget whatever resources we have, someone would like to amend the statute to give more money to customs in quarantine, and almost instantaneously 3 or 4 people jump up and say, "Where are you going to cut? You do that, people are going to get laid off." Okay. We'll just go along with this the meth situation then, because we couldn't possibly ever make hard decisions and prioritize, because everybody who follows campaigning on Guam knows that every politician has priorities. And if you wanted to know what the priorities are, it's everything. Everything is a priority, which of course means nothing is a priority. Education is our top priority. That's why we never give the schools enough money to meet the 14 points. Crime fighting is our top priority, on and on and on. Okay, so that's Demi Cutney. And I think I will give the Post a blue star on that one. Pretty good editorial. So the coveted blue star goes to the Post once again. That takes the Post up to, let's see here, $240. That takes them up to 241 blue stars to 57 for the Daily News. Okay, I'm going to plunge into the card here, but I notice I've got somebody in the green room who's trying hard to get out. Let me see who I got in the green room. I suspect it's big surprise, another Joe. Okay, another Joe. I'm going to come back to you right after this break.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
You've heard of double mile credit card rewards? You can forget all about that. At First Hawaiian Bank, we're stepping it up. Not one, not two, not three, not even 4 times. You guessed it. First Hawaiian Bank is giving you 5 times the miles. Use your First Hawaiian Bank credit card and get rewarded 5 miles for every dollar spent with qualifying purchases at grocery stores. Plus 20,000 bonus miles. Learn more at any First Hawaiian Bank branch or go to FHB.com to apply today. First Hawaiian Bank. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Another Joe. Did you know, another Joe, did you know that all of the Micronesian islands have bailed out of the South Pacific Forum?
Oh, no more money to loot?
Yeah, because they had an agreement amongst the other members that they would alternate amongst the island groups every time they had a president, so they'd take turns. This time it was Micronesian's turn, and they elected a Polynesian instead. So all of the Micronesian islands said, we're out of here.
Snap.
Yeah.
How dare they?
Yeah. Yeah. So what did you want? What I thought said probably what you wanted to tell me about Another Joe, since you're sort of the Micronesian expert here. But go on.
No, I'm not an expert. I just think that they've been given a raw deal. But it's because if they've been loyal allies for 30 plus years, I think that responsible negotiators should be constantly putting American citizenship on the table and possibly having new U.S. territories. But, you know, I mean...
Another Joe, don't open up a business to be a geopolitical consultant. Somehow I think that unlike when you build a better mousetrap, the world will be to pass to your door. Somehow I don't think the world is going to be able to pass to your door. But go on with your story, Another Joe.
Possibly. All right. So regarding you're bringing up the meth issue, the meth problem here in Guam, and I wanted to bring up during the election campaign, Ken the Younger had a pretty good idea of drug sniffing dogs, and I was wondering why none of the Republican senators are picking up on that. You know, because they don't want to give any credit to Ken Youngerell, who was actively campaigning against some of them. Possibly, if it was me, if I was a senator, I would have stolen his idea. Whether or not I give him credit for it, it's still a good idea.
Yeah, it's a good idea. And the idea surfaced just the other day. One of the senators did advance the proposition of buying more drug-sniffing dogs.
Oh, good for him. Which was Chris Duenas?
I don't remember.
Well, whoever it was, good for them. And I think Ken Youngerell wouldn't mind Republicans stealing his idea either, because it would just benefit our community. So that's pretty much what I want to bring up. They got to get serious about getting innovative and thinking out of the box. You know, Bob, we got a pandemic going on, if no one has noticed. And due to that, there got plenty of supply chains that have been interrupted. Being an American, I like to think that Americans are awesome at figuring out where those shortages of supplies are and being innovative and partnering up or going and attempting to supply the needs of that market. So, including within the U.S., the continental United States itself. So I think there needs to be a lot of thinking outside of the box and traditional American thinking, finding ways to create revenue. I was stimulus, economic stimulus in different.
This has something to do with the editorial, with the methamphetamine epidemic. Another, Joe.
Oh, I think I got off. I apologize. I got off subject there. Thinking out of the box was the theme. Saving money, being innovative. That's the main theme. It's the American way. Adapt, and the government needs to allow for people to adapt. And I don't know if it's because they're Democrat majorities, but it's not happening. So anyway, yeah, I don't want to get too far off topic. Drug sniffing dogs. Whoever that senator was, good idea, and let's go for it. Let's go with that. Anyway, so thanks for your time on your show, Bob, and I'll just keep listening.
Okay, another, Joe. My own 2 cents worth here on methamphetamine is that the enforcement angles are really important. The customs, the cops, the dogs, etc., and the rehab is also important. But I see the biggest challenge is I lay it on one person, Angel Sablon. As long as the Angel Sablon attitude prevails in our community, we're never going to lick the drug problem. We know that the most harmful people in our community are people that sell methamphetamine. And Angel Sablon, who holds at least a theoretically responsible position in our community, comes out at the sentencing hearing at this guy, a village mayor who was engaged in the drug, mixed up in the drug trade. We were like brothers. So we have to get the message across to the people of the island that drug dealers are bad people. And then the second message we need to get across is that methamphetamine really screws you up. And what we need to do is find these people that have been on it for a long time, get good photographs of what they look like, and publish those pictures. And say to junior high kids, you want to look like this? You want to have a face like this? You want to be missing half your teeth? I don't think you do, because this is how it happens. Well, anyhow, let's move on. I got somebody else in the green room already. It is none other than Frenchie. Boy, Frenchie's really early today. Good afternoon, Frenchie.
Yeah, I had to get up early so it's very unusual. So anyhow, a quick note on these drug sniffing dogs, and I think a lot of that thing is tied up with what you were just talking about. I don't know if you saw Saturday. Was it Saturday or Friday? There was a column from Pedo in the Post regarding the fact that he wanted everything investigated, including his son, even though he didn't mention his son's name or what the problem was. But it's all tied up to the mayor of Jonia drug trafficking days. And what's very interesting is that regarding drug sniffing dogs, and there was a hearing about custom just a few days ago, I think it was last week, right? Where they were asking why there was not enough dog handlers on top of not having enough dogs. And the director of custom did a kind of a dance around the issue where he was obviously very ill at ease talking about that. He talked about salaries, about people having better opportunities. The one thing that was totally occulted was the fact that on Guam, officers that are dog handlers for drug sniffing dogs have come under threat by drug dealers, threatening their families, even killing their retired dog, like we saw a couple of years ago. I think it was in Melitzo or in Yumatak. One of the dogs was kidnapped and killed in a very cruel ways. It was definitely a way to tell the drug officers, don't do it because we're going to come after you and after your family. And it was very interesting that the Lulayan Guerrero has been very quiet about this. Maybe some of the drug money flows through some of their coffers. but we don't know. We can only speculate. But it's very interesting, and nobody at the Guam PD has addressed those threats against the custom officers that are handling drug sniffing dogs, and the fact that those people have not been protected by the system. On the contrary, they were let on their own to deal with the threats from drug dealers. So that's a major, major issue that nobody wants to talk about, but I think needs to be brought forward. So that's the first thing. The other thing I wanted to talk about, this weekend I listened to a podcast, and so I call it Bevacqua versus Klitzkie, where you were interviewed by some people from Swarthmore College in Pennsylvania regarding the status of Guam, and basically they edited a lot of what you said, and you had a bad phone connection. I think that's exactly what they wanted, and they basically let Bevacqua run around, as well as one of their students who is originally from Guam, whose name is Veronica Chua, who was a valedictorian in 2017 at St. John's High School. And they let them run with a bunch of lies and the usual baseless affirmation from Bevacqua, who is very good at that because nobody ever challenges him. One of his main arguments was against the military presence was, well, you know, people on Guam say we need the military to defend us from China, and look at the other island around, they don't have military bases and they are not threatened by China, which is a bunch of hogwash, especially when you see how China is trying to influence every small island nation in the Pacific, and not talking about countries around the world that do not threaten China, but yet come under threat by China. So who is Bevacqua, the Che, kidding, you know? And he has a lot of arguments like that. That other little girl, Veronica Chua, who, by the way, is a member of the Protehi I can never pronounce it.
Lee Texan.
Lee Texan. I have to work on my Chamorro. And she's an active member of that group, and she made some very wide accusations against the military, especially on that volcanic island north of, what's the name, Pagan?
Yeah, they're using Pagan as a gunnery range.
Yeah, well, Pagan hasn't had any people living on Pagan for decades, since there was a small group that tried to go back, but they had to be evacuated because it's an active volcano, and they failed to say that, of course. They totally occulted that, and so this is typical of those kind of interviews that are set up from the get-go, and you know the way they portrayed you as a former senator, a former military member who set up on Guam and is also a conservative talk show host. So basically, you were condemned from the get-go in your opinions, defending the terrible editing that they did on top of it, which was, you know, typical of a left-wing type of propaganda. It's reminding me the video they put out in the Senate to accuse Trump. You know, they cut and paste. It was ridiculous. But it's typical. Bevacqua is very smart. He's very good at manipulating every form.
He's very good at demagoguery.
At demagoguery and manipulating any form of media out there, and they are very, you know, he's got a lot of time on his hands, so he can do that. For example, he accused the military for being responsible for the brain drain of young people going to study in the U.S. and not coming back. Now, of course, it can only be the military. It has nothing to do with local nepotism, corruption, and lower wages that are being paid on Guam compared to the U.S. He totally occults that all over again. He's a demagogue, and he's a dangerous demagogue. So I wanted to talk about that. He was also accusing Amazon and eBay not wanting to ship items to Guam as being an example of the colonialism and the second-rate citizenry that we are here. Yeah, this guy is amazing. I mean, there is not one thing that he doesn't see that is not the fault of the military and the colonial power, you know. And then he portrays himself like Bevacqua, which obviously is not a Chamorro name, and then he made sure that he linked his background to two clans from Guam, like if it was, you know, he's more Chamorro than most other people, which makes even his nephews laugh at him during family reunions. So it's kind of funny. So that was my point today, and I think also the drug sniffing issue is something like if a senator, one of the senators is looking at it, it's fine, but they're going to have to address on how do you protect both the dogs and the officers that are handling the dogs and their families, so that, and it seems like the threats from the drug dealers were coming straight from some of the law enforcement agencies that are supposed to deal in protecting those people.
We need to work. We need to work with Angel Sablan on that and see if he can tell. See if he can tell us which of them his brothers, people they've treated him like brothers, are doing that, right?
Yeah, or Pido's son, who is now back at being a marshal at the court. So
is he really?
Yeah. After he left DOC, he went back to become a marshal at the court.
That's interesting.
Even though he's been accused of slapping women around and all kind of other things. So we'll see. You know, I don't know if the media will really do their job of investigating those issues, but the article from Pedro the other day really looked like a preemptive strike. I think he knows what's coming, and he was trying to put some distance between himself and his son, but I don't know, you know, he used to be the mayor of Jonah as well, and he knew all those drug dealers. So there are a lot of unanswered questions that the media is not looking into, you know.
Yeah, true enough, Frenchie. You know, one of the rules in public relations is that if you have a problem, hang a lantern on it. Surface it yourself, put it up there, so then you get to frame the issue instead of somebody else. So he may have got some good advice on that. I just like to go back to Bevacqua. I mean, back to Swarthmore College for a moment. Yeah. And when they contacted me, I pretty much knew what it was all about. It didn't take a Phi Beta Kappa to figure out what Swarthmore is all about. But I figured that somebody had to do it, and I would probably be as well suited for it as anybody. And I did get at one point, I did get to say, after one of the Bevacqua raps, I did get to say, Guam is a paradise. It's a paradise on earth. It's a lovely, beautiful tropical island under the American flag with all of the constitutional rights that come with that. It's a great place, which of course was contrary to the narrative. You'd think that you'd think that people living on Guam are just a step above the Uyghurs, you know? Yeah.
Well, and the way that a student from St. John, who is now at Swarthmore College, was putting it, you know, she is from a Filipino background, but she loves Guam. But actually, she is a Filipino Chinese, which raised a lot of questions about her allegiance and where they're going. So, especially the way she approaches and the way she smears the military and everything was typical.
And her lack of accuracy. She said that the island of Pagan is being used for live fire exercises by the military. That just isn't happening. It's just not true. The U.S. uses Farallon de Pajaros way up at the northern end of the chain, and that's it.
Yeah, that's right. And that has been an uninhabited island for centuries.
Yeah.
Forever. I mean, it's almost part of the Bonin Islands. It's still in the Marianas, but it's the far northest one. And there is nothing happening there at all. So, but this is typical, of that new generation of brainwashed kids that have been brainwashed by the likes of Bevacqua and Katie March and all those people that are in the education system and are brainwashing our kids by giving them false or half-truth informations. And this is why it should be underlined that this is a fight that we never took as conservative, but we will have to take, because it goes on for the future of the country and the future generations.
Absolutely, Frenchie. Well, thanks a lot for chiming in. And what you're saying is absolutely true. It just increases the burden on tall tales. So we'll take a short break.
But you and Jose have strong shoulders. So
thank you. Nice talking to you.
Listen to The Point. Any speaker, anytime. Check us out on your FM radio at 93.3, 104.3 HD3, thepoint.gu, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and tune in. And announcing radio.com. Download the app and hear The Point. Get the latest news, sports, entertainment, and more. On demand. Your phone is digital. Your life is digital. And we are too. 93.3, The Point.
Hafide, this is Severina. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more global markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam, Saipan, and on U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com.
Okay, so coming back live here on the air, R. James, if you want to give us a buzz now or perhaps during the halftime show, we'd be glad to get you on the air. Okay, I'm going to start the card here. I got my program notes. And the first item on the card is the governor versus the GOP. And Jose put this theme up for today based on what the governor said on Friday. How dare they do a blatant power play on my blatant power play? Very good, Jose. So, and then the governor in that particular article says, the governor gives the legislature permission to hold hearings. How generous of her. And then we've got Clint versus plutocrats. And Clint stands up here as the voice of the little guy, Mr. Populist Clint, giving a voice to the little guy. And then we've got Laura Sauder versus Ifinu Tsumoru. Laura Sauder continues as the champion of Ilenguata. You got to honk the horn for both of those, Jose. I'm going to make the argument that nothing has retarded the progress of the propagation and preservation of the Chamorro language as much as the Chamorro Language Commission, and I'll tell you why. We've got Senator Brown versus corruption, carrying out her campaign progress. John Ryan introduces the phrase qui tam into the mix. John Ryan, a guy who's been in journalism in a lot of different capacities here. He's been a newscaster. He's been a reporter. I don't know exactly where he's located now, but I heard that I know that he's back on the island, and he has brought suit under our False Claims Act, which I will explain when we get to that part of the card. And I may very well get to the newest comedy team in the Western Hemisphere, in the western part of the Western world. We've had Martin and Lewis and Abbott and Costello and Laurel and Hardy. Now we've got Sabina and Tello. I keep talking about it and I never get to it. Maybe I'll get to it today. So starting right out with the card, I've got governor versus GOP. And the governor, the headline of the article, which ran on PNC, Governor, Bill 11 is a blatant power play by the Republicans. And once again, we go back to Casablanca, Jose. If you haven't seen the movie Casablanca, the next time it's on Channel 39, make sure you watch it. There's a couple of really ironic moments. One of my favorites, of course, is Inspector Reno, who is at Rick's Gambling Casino. And this is in occupied Casablanca, or actually Vichy Casablanca. And the German embassy is really running the show. So the Germans come in and demand that Rick's Casino be closed down because it's pro-French instead of pro-German. And the question is, well, why would we close it down? Gambling. Okay. So Inspector blows his whistle and says, this casino is closed. Gambling. And then he says, someone tells him there's gambling. And he says, gambling? Gambling in Casablanca? I'm shocked, I tell you. And then the next scene shows one of the croupiers coming up to Captain Reno, say, Captain Reno, your winnings. Governor, Bill 11 is a blatant power play by Republicans. Blatant power play? Shocked. I tell you, I'm shocked. Governor Guerrero, here's your SOP for power plays. Yeah. And Governor Leon Guerrero had strong words for Bill 11. That's the bill that prevents the governor from extending a public health emergency without permission from the legislature. The bill was introduced last month by Chris Duenas, Jim Moylan, and Tony Atta. Called the restoration of separation of powers, Moylan said on Monday that the bill isn't just about questioning the governor's decision, but about transparency, checks, and balances. The governor, however, isn't buying it. She is not buying it.
She wants to drop the curtain on it.
Absolutely.
She wants to close the door.
Yeah.
Slam the shutters.
On all of this transparency talk. Yeah. You can ask me anything that you want to about transparency. However, I'm not going to answer you because...
It's the least I can do. Which one is it?
It's a very sensitive...
Oh.
Let's try it again, okay? Yeah, the governor said, I've always been about transparency. You can ask me anything you want to about transparency.
It's really very sensitive information.
There you go. Thank you, Jose.
Anytime.
She said that the legislature oversight of the type demanded by the bill is unnecessary since there are other ways for various stakeholders to give their input. You know, there's kneeling. Yeah. The governor has also rejected the argument that the bill is necessary to give the business community more to say into how to respond to a public health crisis. The business community had an input on the recovery plan. The heads of the chamber, this is from the governor, and the women's chamber and other businesses together came up with our economic recovery plan. I'm going to come back to the governor and power plays right after the big halftime show. James, maybe you can call in during the show.
stopping gun violence as he remembers a Florida tragedy 3 years ago.
The president said his White House, quote, won't wait for the next mass shooting to address gun violence. The declaration coming 3 years to the day after 14 students and 3 staff members at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, were killed by a lone gunman. The president paid tribute to the 17 victims and their families. Biden called on Congress to craft gun reform measures to include background checks on all gun sales, banning multi-round magazines, and lifting immunity for gun makers that add to weapons on the streets. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Biden is spending his first weekend as president at Camp David, the historic retreat for U.S. leaders. It's been used by every president since Franklin Roosevelt first went there in 1943. It's been the site of major diplomatic negotiations and policy discussions throughout history. Meanwhile, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement in Texas reportedly misunderstood instructions from the Biden administration and were about to release 3 men convicted of sex offenses against children.
Fox News confirms ICE officials in Texas nearly released 3 men convicted of sex offenses against children. They were ultimately not released after discussions between ICE and state and local officials, but the dangerous situation arose from an apparent misapplication of President Biden's January 20th memorandum on immigration, rescinding some of the previous administration's practices on deportations and detainers, which seek to keep convicted migrants in custody after their sentence.
Fox's Griff Jenkins says the Department of Homeland Security has issued a memo directing immigration agencies to focus their enforcement efforts on 3 categories: threats to national security, threats to public safety, and immigrants who entered the U.S. illegally on or after November 1st. America is listening to Fox News.
Half a day. This is Alicia Blas from Security Title, reminding you that your 2020 property taxes are now due and payable. You may not know that you can pay your taxes online at pay.guam.gov. All you have to do is follow these simple steps: register, log in, get a PIN, and pay. If you purchased a property after March 2nd, 2020, you will likely not receive a tax bill in your name, but you will still owe the tax. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Roberto Lopez was taken into custody Saturday night and was formally arrested Sunday on charges of murder and attempted murder. One of the stabbing victims was discovered dead on a train in Queens late Friday with several wounds to his neck and torso. A 44-year-old woman was later found stabbed to death in a subway car in Upper Manhattan. Plus, the Lincoln Project co-founder Steve Schmidt resigns amid a scandal.
The Lincoln Project spent tens of millions of dollars on political ads aimed at taking down then-President Donald Trump. Also, politicians who supported President Trump, but now the tables have turned. Some are taking shots at the Lincoln Project, asking about the company's finances. Where are some of those finances going? The Lincoln Project openly admits through public data the group has raised about $90 million. $24.8 million went to Summit Strategic Communications, that's owned by Reed Gallen, who happens to be a co-founder of the Lincoln Project. He's listed as a treasurer in FEC documents. Roughly $20 million went to a company called Tusk Digital, owned by another Lincoln Project founder, Ron Steslow.
Fox's David Spunt. Meanwhile, protests in Russia continue.
Across Russia, we saw state media outlets running an interview with President Putin. He talks about how he believes the West is trying to contain his country. We do know that the Russian head of state was asked about the arrest of Alexei Navalny, that jailed opposition leader, who is still in jail after being taken into custody last month. Putin claimed international bodies who have demanded Navalny's release are trying to isolate Russia as it succeeds in other areas. Navalny was back in court on Friday for charges against him, alleging he slandered a World War II veteran. He faces more jail time in this case that is unrelated to a sentence earlier in the month that handed him nearly 3 years in prison for suspected fraud charges.
That's Fox's Trey Yingst reporting. I'm Mary Corsetti, and this is Fox News.
Introducing the fastest growing virtual kitchen on Guam.
Ghost Table is a secret professional food prep and cooking facility set up for delivery-only meals. The menu is a collaboration of Guam chefs with a passion for creating great-tasting food. Choose from the Westside Hawaiian Grinds, 671 Burger, Side Street Tacos and Burritos, and Osaka Stop. Search for Ghost Table on Grab and Grub to check out the menu and to place your order. Satisfaction guaranteed. Exclusively with Grab and Grub.
Listen to The Point. Any speaker, anytime. Check us out on your FM radio at 93.3, 104.3 HD3, thepoint.gu, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and tune in. And announcing radio.com. Download the app and hear The Point. Get the latest news, sports, entertainment, and more.
On demand.
Your phone is digital. Your life is digital. And we are too. 93.3, The Point.
Another great halftime show here on Tall Tales. It seems impossible, but we continue to improve on perfection with that halftime show. So I left off with the governor talking about how much she abhorred power plays, except in one limited circumstance, and that circumstance would be if she were the one running the power play. Then it's maybe okay. And she's saying that Bill 11 is unnecessary. You know, everybody has input, et cetera. And she goes on to say, the governor said the bill seems less like a good faith effort to maintain checks and balances and more like a blatant power play on the part of the Republicans. Wow.
Can you please cite some examples, ma'am?
Yeah, blatant power play. I think I'm going to go find my membership card in the Republic and burn it. Yeah. Power play, Republicans? But then the governor wraps it up in a very good close here. She says, everyone knows, everyone sees it. Everyone knows. Yeah. I guess I'm not everyone. Everyone sees it. That's the easy way to prove things. In fact, in my work up to the show that I haven't done for a long time, I caution against advancing that as the proof of anything. The old, everybody knows that. Yeah, that just doesn't work.
Or how about the if you can't see it, then I can't help you.
Exactly. That's the same, cut from the same cloth. Everyone knows. Everyone sees it. We have to think about, what is this going to mean? If it's input, now, if it's input, I told the senators, you can always have input. Every day we can have a public hearing and get what the people are saying about it, the governor said. So she gave him an opportunity, the permission to have a hearing every day. Now, I wasn't there, but it was reported to me when she had that conversation with the senators. One of the senators said, Governor, you can't really hear us when we say these things. And the reason you can't hear us is because you have a banana in your ear. To which the governor said, I'm sorry, Senator, I can't hear you. I have a banana in my ear. Yeah, so much for the governor. Another noted Democrat, Clint. This is Clint versus the plutocrats. Democrats push back against minimum wage increase delay. Now, before I plunge into this, I've got to tell you a straight scoop on minimum wage, okay? And first of all, I'm going to expose one of my many conservative biases. I don't like to see a situation where the government sets the price of anything because they don't do it right. You can't artificially set the price of anything. A relatively free market determines the value of any good or service. People want to buy it. The more people want to buy it, the higher its value, and reverse is true. So when you've got the government setting the price of anything, it's not going to be efficient. It's not going to work. It's not going to work well. Even if the best intended government officials in the world are doing the price setting, it's not going to work. Then you couple that with the fact that you very seldom get the best intended people setting the price of things in the government. There are usually motivations other than economic reality, like this constituency or that constituency or this lobbyist or my cousin or my cuñado or whatever. So having the government set the price of anything is not the way it should be done. When it comes to setting the price of labor, what I just said is true in spades. You know, we talk about freedom, we talk about slavery, we talk about abolishing slavery, etc. And yet we pass laws that criminalize a person taking a job that isn't in accordance with some law. So if I wanted to go to work at Atkins Kroll washing windows for $2 an hour, I should be free to do that. But if Atkins Kroll hired me, talk about transparency, huh? If Atkins Kroll hired me to wash windows for $2 an hour, and I said, 40, I don't get enough out of 40 hours. I want to work 60 hours a week. We're going to have to pay a time and a half over 40, but no, just straight time, just $2 an hour for 60 hours. If I did that, Atkins Kroll could be in a heap of trouble because they'd be violating the law. I can't work for a price that I want to work for or a price they want to work for. The government has to come in and set the price. And of course they do it because, we don't want people to be taken advantage of. Well, here's the sad thing about it. If the minimum wage is $8.25 an hour, in other words, it's against the law to hire someone and pay that someone less than $8.25 an hour, what do you do with the guy whose time is only worth $7.25 an hour? You're only going to hire him if he is good enough on the job to cover his own wages and have a little bit left over for you. Businesses are not eleemosynary organizations. They're not charitable organizations. So if the minimum wage is $8.25 and a guy's time is only worth $7.25, he's not going to have a job. So the minimum wage for him is not $8.25. The minimum wage for him is $0. That's why the market should set the price of labor, not the government. And taking it to argumentum reductio ad absurdum, right? If a minimum wage, let's say a minimum wage is $15 an hour, that's what the Burn and all of the lefties want, $15 an hour. That way a man could raise a family, et cetera, et cetera. Well, if that's the case, why stop with $15 an hour? Why don't we set the minimum wage at $100 an hour? Then everybody could own a Lexus and a really nice house and have all kinds of, not have to worry about medical care. It's why piddle around with $8.25 an hour when the government has the power to set the minimum wage anywhere, Why not set it so that everybody can be rich? Isn't that what the Democrats are all about? That everybody could be rich? A fighting cock in every pot? A lowrider in every garage? Isn't that the Guamanian dream? Yeah, it makes the whole thing is impractical, illogical, and it doesn't work. But it's a good place for demagoguery like Clint. Clint comes along and he says, you know, the Republicans are saying, hold off on this increase that's supposed to occur on March 1st. It's supposed to go to 9.25%. Because businesses are just barely hanging on. No business can handle another increase in the minimum wage. And then Clint comes along and shows us what he is all about. Clint, that great populist, comes along and says he's opposed to Bill 24. He said it's the senator's duty to protect working class people. It's their duty, and keep wages in line with inflation as much as possible. I don't think we're living in a time of inflation right now. However, you know, if you know anything at all about economics, raising wages tends to have an inflationary effect. So you go from making $5 an hour when a gallon of gas costs $1 to making $10 an hour when a gallon of gas costs $2 an hour. So as the minimum wage goes up, prices go up. That's not good enough for Clint. He says it's a senator's duty to protect working class people and keep wages in line with inflation. And then Clint, the populist, comes forward and takes a swipe at plutocrats. Plutocrats. Pluto meaning wealth. It's not that dog from the cartoons.
It's not people from the planet Pluto? Or is it a star?
I think it's a moon.
It's a moon now.
Or an asteroid, yeah. Pluto means wealth. Crat means governor, right? Crassy, right? So a plutocrat, plutocracy means government by wealth. And Clint does not have any time for plutocrats. Clint says businesses have a lot of say in the political sphere because the business community has money and influence. Yeah. And then Clint comes along. The working class people often don't have the same amount of influence. That's why I'm here, Clint says, right over here. Workers of the world. No, he didn't say that. That's Clint. A little demagoguery goes a long way in politics. Okay, I got a couple folks in the green room here. I guess they want to talk about the minimum wage. Let me just take a look here. The return of another Joe. Yeah, it's kind of like going back to movies. There was a movie once called Lassie Come Home, starring another Joe. No matter where he went, he always came back. And then I've got the most dangerous man in the room, R. Carl. So, in order to provide a little safety for another Joe so he doesn't have to share the green room with the most dangerous man in the room, and because he's already ridden on the Ferris wheel once, I'm going to go to R. Carl first. And after that, we'll give another Joe a chance. So tell me about minimum wages, R. Carl.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics you bring up because I think politicians tend to soapbox on this about how they're going to rescue the poor people and the middle class when actually they created the conditions that caused all the problems that the poor and the middle class are going through. Just a few thoughts I'd like to toss in for whatever they're worth for mental food. One of them is that right at this very moment, we have people on island earning $15 an hour. At this moment, $20 an hour, $25 an hour, $30 an hour, $40 an hour, $50 an hour, $60 an hour, $100 an hour. And how did those people, why are they earning that much money per hour? Is it because of government kindness. No, it's exactly what our favorite economist and social philosopher Thomas Sowell concluded after examining wealth and poverty around the world. The deciding factor is human capital. It's that stuff between your ears, your attitudes, your habits, your experiences, your work skills that enable you to create value for which the marketplace is willing to pay. So, you know, it's just, I find it very ironic. Another thought I'd like to toss in, $15 minimum, $15 an hour minimum wage makes it, to take it to the absurd, illegal to pay someone $14.99. So if a small business owner ran the numbers, you know, to find out they want to create some new positions or a new position, and they found out, you know, with all their expenses, fixed expenses and non-fixed, they could only afford to pay $14.99. I know that's ridiculous, but it just illustrates how absurd this whole thing is. It also makes it illegal for a prospective employee and a small business owner to mutually agree to a $14 an hour wage or a $13 an hour wage or a $12 an hour wage. So or $11 per hour wage or a $10 per hour wage. So if these employers cannot run the numbers and they can't afford it, labor is usually one of the biggest, if not the biggest, expenses for small businesses. Then this idea will have destroyed millions of jobs. And I think there was a big news story about the minimum wage, just $15 an hour minimum wage, destroying over 1 million jobs within a very short time. Also, a third thought, and then I'll close up and let whoever, you know, another Joe get on. I find it ironic about the Senator Rigel attacking the plutocrats, when in fact the primary enemy of the poor and the middle class are the political class. And for example, what causes inflation? It's the government inflating the money supply. It basically destroys the buying power of every existing dollar out there when they run the printing press continuously. The rich, they can invest in good real estate. That actually takes advantage of inflation, and it counters that. They can invest in a mix of stocks and bonds, so they can get, you know, they have ways to counter those things. The poor and the middle class don't. And the primary villain that has destroyed trillions of dollars of buying power over decades has been government. So, you know, I just find it ironic. Government so often rides up on the steed with the armor on, you know, saying we're going to protect the little guy, you know, and they're actually the ones that have caused all these problems, including the social problems, you know, that the poor are experiencing right now. So anyway, those are just 3 thoughts I thought I'd toss in to kind of provide some other perspective to the senator's demagoguery of the rich. You know, and I realize there are people who, you know, certain people who do deserve some blame, and that is the rich who have cronies in government. As long as the entrepreneurs and small business people and large business people don't seek protection from their crony associates in the government.
It's called rent-seeking, Carl.
Yeah.
Rent-seekers are the problem.
Yes, exactly. There are thousands of once huge businesses that they don't exist anymore. They're They're either ghosts, they're dead, or they're a tiny shell of what they were. IBM, Pan Am. There's thousands of them. And what happened? I mean, they had hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars in assets. What happened is the consumers found companies that served them better. So they transferred their buying power to these other companies. And these companies that weren't serving as well started to downsize. It wasn't government that downsized them, it was the consumer. They voted with their dollars, and they said, these guys are giving us lousy service. We're going to take it over to this other company here that has a better service, a newer idea, something better. So anyway, those are just some of my thoughts on the issue.
Well, thanks for sharing, Carl.
All right. Thank you, Bob, for letting me chime in. I always appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Yeah, a guy named Joseph Schumpeter back around 1950 came up with the theory of creative destruction. In a capitalist economy, new businesses come along and displace old businesses that haven't adopted or aren't efficient. As an example, one that I know a little bit about is Carter carburetors. There was a time, when I thought if you didn't have grease under your fingernails, you weren't really a cool teenager. Spent a lot of time under a hood. When Carter carburetors were state of the art, Carter made a really good carburetor, but they're out of business now. What happened to Carter carburetor? Fuel injection. So when fuel injection came along, they thought, we'll just make a better carburetor. And away they went. Creative destruction. I just wanted to mention a couple of experiences that I've had with the minimum wage. When I was a youngster growing up in Wisconsin, getting my first job, I got my first break in show business in Elkhorn, Wisconsin when I was 15 years old. Yeah. They hired me to run the popcorn stand at the Sprague Theater. I thought I was on my way to Hollywood, but somehow my career never took off.
Probably because you didn't have a $15 an hour minimum wage.
That's it. I was paid 55 cents an hour.
Outrageous.
Yeah, and all the popcorn I could eat. Yeah, I could eat a lot of popcorn.
There's a lot of corn in Wisconsin.
And then about the same time, I got another job in Big Pharma. And I said, boy, Big Pharma, that's big money. 55 cents an hour again. I was a soda jerk at King & Morgan Drugstore.
You're going to have to explain that term to all the young ones out here.
Soda jerk is a guy who's working in the soda fountain. That's kind of neat because the young ladies would come in and ask for things like chocolate malt or a cherry soda or a root beer float or something like that. And the soda jerk would put all this stuff together, kind of like a bartender where there's no alcohol. That's a soda jerk. So when I was a soda jerk in King & Morgan, I was, again, 15 cents an hour, and all of the ice cream I could sneak. The job paid minimum wage, 55 cents an hour wasn't much. But for what I was worth, it was really good because I didn't really know what having a job was all about. I caught on really quick, but until you got one, you don't know. So you can't expect somebody to walk in off the street and be a productive employee of a company. The minimum wage is not a living wage. It's a starting wage. It's for high school kids or young kids or people like that who really don't understand the workaday world to get started on a job. And because I was able to handle those jobs pretty well, I kind of worked my way up in the world to all the way to the very pinnacle of employment, being a talk show host. It doesn't get any better than that. All right, let's talk baseball here for the seventh inning stretch.
Half a day. This is Alicia Blas from Security Title, reminding you that your 2020 property taxes are now due and payable. You may not know that you can pay your taxes online at pay.guam.gov. All you have to do is follow these simple steps. Register, log in, get a PIN, and pay. If you purchased a property after March 2nd, 2020, you will likely not receive a tax bill in your name, but you will still owe the tax. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Okay, so here we are, seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field, Chicago, and I wanted to share one other youthful experience at the minimum wage. I was a pump jockey at Phil's Shell Station. Yeah, by that time I was making $1 an hour. Now again, for younger folks here, a pump jockey was a guy who worked in a gas station that actually put the gasoline into your car. Back in the day, if a customer pulled into a gas station and grabbed the hose off the pumps, they'd call the cops on him. Only the pump jockey got to pump gas, put gas in the car. So it usually went like this. The driver would pull in and roll his window down, and I'd say, "Good morning." And I'd say, "Good morning, fill her up?" And the driver would usually say, "Yeah." And I'd say, "Regular or ethyl?" Ethyl was the leaded gasoline that sold for more money, but it had anti-knock properties. You can't buy ethyl anymore. So, so the nice thing about being a pump jockey back in those days was that your friends would all say, "Bob, you still down there at Phil's Shell pumping ethyl?" Yeah. Okay. Youthful experience. I had another Carl on the line, and then he rang off. I guess he didn't like my story, huh?
Yeah, he wanted to do a redux, but he said he'll give another Joe another ride.
All right, we'll let another Joe go for a ride on the Ferris wheel again. Climb on board, another Joe.
Hey, Bob. I'm not going to venture, but I'm guessing that if that's young man humor, it's probably rated R joke.
Probably what?
The joke is probably rated R, at least. Regarding, you bring up really interesting issues. It kind of makes me wonder, the gas that's no longer offered, is it possible that fuel injection has made that sort of gas less sellable? Does fuel injection?
No, it was the environmental wackos that took. You remember when you'd see signs on the pumps that said unleaded?
Yeah.
Well, ethyl gasoline, it was some way that they compounded lead into the mix so that you wouldn't have pre-ignition knock. That was the thing about ethyl. So it was just the environmental wackos who said, we don't need all of this lead flying out of people's exhaust pipes. And they pretty well killed the market for ethyl. That must have been in the 70s, I guess, huh?
But I'm also curious, did fuel injection reduce the problems of engine knocking?
I think probably, at least in theory. But I can't speak with authority on that. I suspect so because you wouldn't have the heat at the top of the cylinder that you might have with carburation. But you made me curious on that one. I don't know, another Joe.
Okay. So I called because I was regarding minimum wage. Of course, the issue of debt in the economy, and so with regards to minimum wage, as you said, people do earn that much money. It's just usually you get experience, you get training, and then you work your way up. But I get a sense that it's an issue of population. So hence the populist you're referring to, Mr. Rajal, as a populist. That would be places where there's, I'm guessing, more of urban areas where there's going to be limited resources, limited jobs. People are competing for jobs, which would seem counterintuitive because that's where the demand would be. But there's just so much of a population that there's so much competition. You have like more of a suburban place. There'll be less demand for all sorts of resources, and there'll be seemingly basically a stable economy, and so whatever minimum wage would be offset by, you would think of a suburban area as a family environment. So you would have your family around you, and they'll be assisting each other collectively, economically, and it'll be like a one family home as opposed to projects, and apartment structures, large apartment structures. But anyway, not to get too off point there, the $15 an hour, what it does is small business owners, it adds to overhead. So it reduces, it makes it more difficult for the small business owners to compete in markets, and also to hire more employees, because they're gonna have to add that to the overhead. So I think the real issue is whether, I think it's a political party issue, because it's become like a tribal issue. So there's lack of trust and the Democrat Party, especially, of small business owners, but they don't want to come out and say that, because small business basically creates half, if not most, of all jobs in the United States. So, it's going to be really bad if they come out, openly attacking the small business sector, or the private sector, because they're going to lose votes. But basically, that's what they're hinting at, right? When they're saying, "Oh man, you guys, you're not giving enough money to survive on." So there needs to be alternative ways other than penalizing small business owners. I wanted to ask, well, before I forget, Mr. Rajal. It's interesting because, like I said, I think it's tribalism. So he's a Democrat. He wants to show that he's supportive of the Democrat Party. And so usually Democrats prove this by going as far to the left as they can. And unfortunately, and I don't think that he grew up without resources here on Guam. I do know his father was a history teacher, very well known, nice guy. And I don't know his father's political background, but I've never come across teachers who openly said they're communists or socialists. So in the classroom,
you'd only find him at the university, not in the high school level. Another Joe.
So I don't know that his father has those leanings. So I'm really surprised. I'm just guessing because, of course, Mr. Rajal was an anchorman, was at KLEM, and so he knows about ratings, and so he knows that, by doing what he's doing, he's going to get ratings enough to get elected a senator. So I'm just guessing that's why he's a populist. But going back to the economy, I want to ask, in a way, you used to be legal counsel for the legislature, if I remember right, saying it. Is it possible for the legislature, the 36th legislature, for example, to allow for private citizens and possibly businesses in the private sector to donate funds directly to paying off bonds, up to date. I don't know how the term is, but the bonds that the government has, is it possible for, and then they could designate bonds specifically either for capital projects or for bonds that were taken out for cash shortfalls.
It's possible, another Joe. And if the legislature were to open that donation pathway, the people it would be a stampede of people rushing in to donate money to pay off those bonds. The government, they'd have to hire extra people just to keep track of all that money coming in.
You're being. I wasn't sure if you're being honest or you're joking.
That horn comes in handy.
I was almost fooled. I said, what?
But no, seriously, Uncle Bob. I wonder, is there a legal way? Would that be would that be something that can be done? Is there a legal path to that? Stating, okay, here is the option of
we could pass a law that says anyone who wants to, when he pays his income tax, can pay double the amount that he owes. That would be legal, another Joe. But no one has ever thought of it. I wonder why.
I'm sorry, double.
Yeah,
but not specifically to.
Well, for any reason. I mean, any of these things are legal. If people want to give their money away, of course it's legal. But the chances of anyone wanting to do that are not very great, another Joe.
Well, it hasn't, not until recently has there been multimillionaires in recent decades here in Guam, multimillionaires and, well, local multimillionaires, or people who identify this, your favorite topic of is ethnic identity. But anyway, a lot of people have become multimillionaires, and you have a governor who's a billionaire. So I'm just saying it's possible. If they have to pay taxes anyway, and someone says, hey, I'd like for my taxes to go to paying those outstanding bonds, as opposed to just leaving it in the hands of the senators who are going to argue over, man, we got to pay money to, and everything's a priority, as you say.
Another Joe, I'm going to give you time to take that one back to the drawing board. I think it needs a lot more work. And
I agree.
And I want to give our Carl a second ride on the
Thank you for your time, Uncle. I appreciate it.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, it seems that the Ferris wheel is pretty comfortable today. It's a second guy that wants to take a second ride here, so go for it, our Carl.
Yeah, there's just one point I would like to add regarding the minimum wage, especially about this idea of the failures of government and how they are actually demanding that small business, especially small businesses, pay for their failures. One of them is the failure of policymakers to create economic policies that attract in capital, business capital, investment capital, to create new jobs. Capital flows where it's treated well. And if it's overtaxed or otherwise mistreated, there's competition all around the world. There's competition in 50 states that are just hankering to get business capital, investment capital there. And the more businesses, the more it becomes an employee's market. In the stagnant economy that the government of the past few administrations has managed to create, is what I would like to call an employer's market. You don't like the conditions at your job? That's too bad, because I've got 500 other applications in my drawer. If you don't like it, don't let the door hit you on the way out. But in a booming economy, employers are forced to keep the best people they can, because otherwise turnover will eat them alive. They invest money and time in training people, and they say, I'm not so excited about this job anymore, and there's 5 other jobs I saw listed with better benefits, better pay. Goodbye. I'll see you later. So they are forced to do that. And one huge example is every year Forbes and Fortune have an issue devoted to the 100 best companies to work for in America. And these are excellent wages, excellent training, excellent working conditions. That has nothing to do with government officials being charitable. It has to do with competition. They're looking out for their best interests by providing the best working conditions they can so they can attract the best people. And the second failure I see is in the school system. They have our kids for 12 years, and there is a increasing failure to give them the very, very basic human capital they need to be attractive to the marketplace. I'm talking about reading, writing, arithmetic, critical thinking, creative thinking, and things like that. Nowadays, in our school system, not only on Guam, but in the States, there is an increasing emphasis on creating little social justice warriors. Doesn't matter if you can barely read.
Just like Miss Chua at Swarthmore. What was her first name again?
I think you mentioned she went to St. John's, so that's interesting.
Victoria? Yeah, Victoria Chua got her education at St. John's.
Yeah, so it's no longer increasingly less important to give young people the human capital they need to create value. As long as they can show up at protests, create protest signs, and have the right identity politics attitude and politically correct attitude, that's all that matters.
Just wait till we put the social credit mechanism in place. Then they'll really be able to soar.
But those are two things I just wanted to chime in that I just find it ironic that Senator Rigel is wagging the finger at private enterprise when it's actually the failures of government that have created the problems that the poor and the middle class are experiencing. And I'm talking about government locally, and I'm talking about state governments in the states and federal governments. So I just wanted to provide some balance to that. Anyway, thank you, Bob. I appreciate you allowing me to ride the Ferris wheel a second time. It's been a privilege.
It is indeed a privilege, Carl. Yeah, and I guess everyone who rides that Ferris wheel recognizes that it is a privilege. Okay, let's head for Churchill Downs here.
Listen to The Point. Any speaker, anytime. Check us out on your FM radio at 93.3, 104.3 HD3, thepoint.gu, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and tune in. And announcing radio.com. Download the app and hear The Point. Get the latest news, sports, entertainment, and more.
On demand.
Your phone is digital. Your life is digital. And we are too. 93.3, The Point.
Okay, Google. Hey, Siri. Hi, Bixby.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Open the Point app. Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations. Check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on the App Store and Google Play, or go to thepoint.gu.
Well, here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, a home of the Kentucky Derby. So we're heading down the home stretch here, Tall Tales. We had two more innings after the seventh inning stretch, and here we are. And I'm probably going to be able to get somewhere into the next item on the card, which is Sauder versus Finut Samoru. And I'm working on an article that ran in the Post, Bridging the Chamorro Language as We're Learning and Teaching Gaps. And I said back in the program notes that I can't think of any group of people on the island that is more counterproductive with respect to the propagation or preservation of the Chamorro language than the Chamorro Language Commission. Let me just start out with this article here. The Chamorro learning gap is indisputable. 3 generations have experienced the backlash of the English-only policy that was promulgated in earnest after World War II. It's ironic that as war survivors were celebrating, quote, liberation, the suppression of our language began in full force. This is another one of these myths that's very convenient. Ko tongo fino tomorrow, he te senya na pat kunjo sa te janieha e man maestro. I couldn't learn because the teachers didn't like it. Well, when I started teaching here in the early 60s, if we were to apply the one drop rule as far as who was and who wasn't Chamorro, I don't remember a single kid that could not speak Chamorro. This was the early 60s. Everybody who was Chamorro could speak Chamorro. Back in those days, finding kids that could string together a couple of paragraphs in standard English was something of a challenge, but finding kids that could speak Chamorro wasn't. So this is 63. This is my math skills are leaving me. 19 years after liberation, and people were still speaking Chamorro then. So it wasn't, we got punished right after World War II, and nobody wanted to speak. From, I would say, sometime in the 70s on, the number of young folks who spoke Chamorro started to decline very rapidly. I didn't do any scientific surveys or anything like that, just my own observation and my attempts to speak Chamorro to young folks. And oftentimes I'd get, I understand it, but I can't speak it. This is my analysis. The reason that people don't speak Chamorro is a very easy reason. They don't want to. That's the big reason. And I'm going to back up here and do a little explaining along the way. I never had to learn English. I never learned English in my whole life. I didn't have to. I got English for nothing. It's my mother tongue. In other words, you got to use your imagination on this one now. When I was a little baby, that's kind of like...
Got to pull out the time machine here.
Yeah, but I mean, talking about me being a little baby, that's like imagining Godzilla coming out of an egg or something like that. Yeah, but when I was a little baby, my parents talked to me, and everybody else. That's what people do with little babies. They talk to the little babies, and the babies hear it, and they try to imitate, and they learn their mother tongue. Much of it they learn from their mothers. Nobody, it's not an effort for kids to learn their mother tongue. They just learn it. I got it for nothing. And before World War II, Chamorros got it for nothing. And those kids that I taught in the early 60s got it for nothing. They didn't have to learn it. It was a part of growing up. So when you invent myths like this, that the reason that people don't speak Chamorro now, it doesn't make things easier. It makes things harder. Because in order for Chamorro to make what I'm going to call a comeback, people are going to have to want to speak it. Now, the young folks that I talk to here and there and everywhere, I say, well, you took Chamorro in school. Yeah, we didn't learn anything. We played around and cooked and did all kinds of stuff, but we never really learned anything. And besides, I didn't even want to do it. I had to do it. That's the only reason I was there. So we're not doing it. So the people that are supposed to be in charge of promulgating Chamorro are the wrong people. If you want Chamorro to thrive, what you need is people who understand marketing. They don't have to know how to say half a day, but they have to understand marketing, how to sell something to someone, how to convince younger folks nowadays that being able to speak Chamorro is really, really cool. So cool that if you got to put some effort into knowing how to do it, it's well worth it because it's cool. if you can do that, then there will be a rebound in the number of folks here who can speak Chamorro. But if it's just something a bunch of old people want them to do because it makes the old people feel good, it's not going to happen. So as Guam progressed, after the security clearance was listed in 1962, and Guam became more integrated into the rest of the world, it wasn't an isolated tropical outpost anymore, and more Western influence flooded into the island, people just decided, if my kids don't speak Chamorro, if they are functional in the economy that's coming along now, it's no biggie. Before the war, Guam had a subsistence economy. Most people raised everything that they ate. There wasn't a market economy, very little commerce. We really didn't have a civilian economy here until after the Organic Act passed. And that's the reason we got stuck with all these government utilities. There was no private economy to build a power plant or any of these other things. It was all Navy, all government. So as a market economy developed and people participated in the market economy, Chamorro seemed to have less value to them. Now, I don't want to get into any arguments about, preserving the culture and how about who we are as a people, etc. Going back to Thomas Sowell, Carl's favorite, Thomas Sowell describes things the way they are. And the tendency when you're talking about sociology is to not talk about things the way they are, talk about them the way you'd really like them to be. And the way they are is that the reason that most people who don't speak Chamorro is because they don't want to. And they don't see any sense in putting in the effort to learn how to do it. If we were going to have if we were going to interest people in learning how to speak Chamorro, the worst thing we could do would be to start playing around with the orthography. Orthography means the system where languages are made of sound. What's coming out of my mouth right now is language. What you see on this paper is not language. So an orthography is a way to reduce sound to writing in such a manner that someone can pick it up and read it and understand it. We had a perfectly good orthography going all the way back to the Spanish era. I'm going to refer to it as the Spanish orthography. Spanish is a world language. They've put their orthography in place, I don't know, probably 1,000 years ago. It's well articulated, it's well understood. It's not something that takes scientists to understand. And that's where we started out here. That's why we spell Jonia, or more appropriately, Zotnia, we spell it with a Y. Because in some dialects of Spanish, the Y has a Z sound. So if you were from Puerto Rico, for example, you'd say, yo soy Riqueño. Well, I'm going to pick this up tomorrow. Remember, the name of the card was Souter versus Ifino Chamorro. That's where we'll start tomorrow. Good to be back in the saddle here, Tall Tales. See you tomorrow.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM, and 104.3 HD3.
A major winter storm continues. I'm Mary Corsetti, Fox News. Heavy snow and freezing rain are forecast to spread northeastward through Monday across the central and eastern parts of the country. 6 to 12 inches of snow is forecast for much of the Ohio Valley and part of the Great Lakes region and interior northeast.
We're going to be talking about an ice storm that's going to set off for a lot of people in the country. So we have snow, we have ice, we have rain. The rain this time looks to be coastal areas across parts of the east.
Fox News meteorologist Rick Remuth reporting. And the Senate impeachment trial ended Saturday with President Trump acquitted of inciting an insurrection at the Capitol January 6th. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham tells Fox News Sunday the impeachment set a standard which could be used against Democrats in the future.
We've opened Pandora's box to future presidents, and if you use this model, I don't know how Kamala Harris doesn't get impeached if the Republicans take over the House, because she actually bailed out rioters, and one of the rioters went back to the streets and broke somebody's head open. 7
Republican senators joined all 50 Democrats voting in favor of conviction, with 43 Republicans voting against it. A conviction required 67 votes. Meanwhile, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is facing criticism after new allegations of a cover-up of the amount of nursing home deaths in New York due to COVID-19. An aide to the governor admitted during a conversation that the state withheld COVID-19 nursing home death data on purpose.
The governor facing a lot of blowback after this phone call about nursing home deaths. The data confirmed that thousands more deaths in nursing homes than previously reported by the state. According to a call between Democratic lawmakers, one of Cuomo's top aides, Melissa DeRosa, admitted that the administration had been withholding the release of COVID-19 deaths in long-term care facilities.
Fox's Alex Hogan says over 9,000 virus patients were sent into New York nursing homes. America is listening to Fox News.